welcome to the program. This is Sunday Politics live on Channels Television. I'm Sowore in Abuja. Let's begin the program. Nigeria is at a juncture where it needs to make a critical and historical turn, one which will determine how it sails through the challenges ahead. I mean, no doubt it might be turbulent because the world is even experiencing turbulence in several aspects of life. Now, the nation is in search of a new captain of his ship. Whether it will sail happily or otherwise depends on the choices the people regarded as the largest population of black people on earth make. And that decision is in February next year. The decision day is nearing and the choices have been put before them. Like a buffet, you can see, but the taste is in the eating. And you can only appreciate when you taste it. How then can you know who the best man for the job or the woman for the job will be, or the number one seat and perhaps the highest office in the land? It's very critical. It's a very, very fundamental choice that Nigerians need to make. And perhaps you're thinking about it. Who is the best man for the job? 18 political parties have presented their candidates. The choice for Nigeria is going to be made in February, and the choice is yours. We've started a series on this program on this network, probing the manifestos of the different political parties. And tonight, we will continue. And we'll look into some more of these political parties, these candidates and their manifestos, the agenda, what they have in store for Nigeria. I'm being joined tonight by the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, AAC, Mr. Sowore. Is live with me here in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Sowore, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for bringing me.
Right, we'll look at your manifesto, but let's check with you in the state of the race, your place in the state of the race. If you look at it, assessing the state of the race, some people will say 3-horse race, 4-horse race. Where do you belong in this race?
Well, I'm not part of the horses. So I belong in the race, and I've said this repeatedly, that this race is open to the best. If all the players in this kind of race are fair and balanced, particularly the media, to allow Nigerian people listen to all the candidates, and I mean all the candidates, not excluding any one of us in this 18-man race. So it should be an 18-horse race, but I decline the use of the word horse because I'm not an animal, but I understand what you're saying. So I am not in the race to be counted as, the first or the front runners, but as the fourth runner on the race based on ideas. And that's what has led us to where we are today. We've always projected those who are the worst as the best for us. And in my lifetime, and I've repeated this several times, that in 1979, I was about 8 years old, and I could feel the disappointment Nigeria brought upon itself when the most prepared person for that race, 1989, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, was dumped because the system did not agree with him. Only for him to die, I think, some 10 years later, everybody was saying he's the best president Nigeria should have had. Shame. And that's what we should be discussing, ideas.
You fear that the best sometimes don't get it in Nigeria?
The best have never gotten it in Nigeria.
Do you think you are the best?
I believe so.
In this race?
Absolutely.
You said that is the last time in 2019 that you were the best in that race.
And events have proven me to be right, because all the ideas that we wanted to implement, spoken about in 2019, have now become dominant. Even some of the ideas that they were laughing at, minimum wage, the issue of alternative source of revenue for the country, the way we wanted to fight corruption, some of the ideas in 2019 were even stolen by the ruling party, brazenly. I was the one who first proposed, for instance, that Abiola Democracy Day should be June 12 as opposed to May 29. And they stole the idea.
If you had the fear that the best man usually don't get has never gotten it, do you think this year will be different?
I believe so, because I believe and I hope that people have learned their lessons, especially in the last 4 years, because Nigeria has gotten worse progressively in the last 4 years. And had Nigerians, and I'm saying this here, had Nigerians taken that bold step in 2019 and elected Sowore, we will not be where we are today. We'll be more safe, we'll be secure, You know, there won't be an ASU strike for 8 months. You know, we won't have a naira that has now become a toilet paper. And we won't have the kind of corruption that we have in place today. Our health situation will be better. We probably wouldn't have had the flood that is ravaging Nigeria now, because I would have started 4 years ago to build a dam that would be generating nothing less than 1,000 megawatts, and it could have been completed at least in 4 years, like Egyptians and Moroccans do it.
What makes you think that you are the best man for the job? Now, I compare this race to the Olympics.
Yes.
I mean, you don't mouth that you're the best. You go in the heat and you get onto the track.
Yes. But the difference between Nigeria and the Olympics is that, you know, when you run a race in the Olympics, everybody is watching you, and the umpires are never biased. Well, they might be sometimes, but they are most likely 99% of the time, because right now they are aided by computers. They are not biased to the point that the winner is made the loser, and the loser is made the first person. And so that is why the Olympics is different from the Nigeria electoral system.
So, I mean, you've not said why you think you are the best.
Oh, I've said it. I mentioned several things that I put out in 2018, 2019 that become dominant. I told you what I would have done to solve so many of the problems that are afflicting you. And in terms of ideas, intellect, and exposure, even education, I'm better off than the candidates that were presented in 2019. Even some of the younger candidates in 2019 who came to me and said we should join together, that they are better than me. They have known and discovered who is more resilient, because I'm probably the only one who is still around 4 years later. After spending time in jail, restriction, being shot at, you know who the Teflon is by now. Yes.
Now, you look at it and you look at what the vote you garnered in 2019.
Yes.
It was dismal.
I just told you that there was no voting. I said it before on this program, and I'm repeating it, that 2019 was not an election, it was a selection.
So those votes that you got that were written across your name, you don't think that those are the ones that voted for you?
They allocated votes, and the person who won did not win because it was vote allocation, it wasn't vote tabulation.
So you think that this year may be different?
I believe so. I believe so. I believe strongly that it should be, and it must be, because if the right person don't come around now, Nigeria is living on borrowed times. Yes. So we don't have more time left.
Yeah, and I said that earlier because we need to make a turn in our lives as a people, and that turn, we need a captain that will steer the affairs.
That's why we keep telling Nigerians that we can't continue.
The question is, can Nigerians trust Sowore? What is your pedigree? What is your experience? Because if you are going to appoint a CEO of a company,
yes.
You've lived in the United States.
Yes.
You know what it is. The seriousness that comes with appointing a CEO for a company is no jokes at all. I mean, same here in Nigeria, if you're going to appoint for a multinational or a corporation in Nigeria, you pick the very best. So what makes Omoyele Sowore the best, considering your pedigree, your education, and your experience? Do you have what it takes to lead this country?
Oh, absolutely. Let me just be very clear. We shouldn't be comparing a country to a company, because you can become the CEO of a company on the basis of the shareholding of one person, and the company may have a position that gives them superpower on it. This is a country, and it needs a president. And the president of a country should not be compared to the CEO of a company, because it's a reflection of everybody in the country. It's a reflection of their sentiment, biases, their aspirations, and their love for progress. So in terms of education, I have said it, and you know my public education profile. I have a master's degree in public administration, by the way. I'm probably the only candidate in this race with a master's degree in public education, public administration. And for that matter, a degree that I got from an Ivy League school, one of the best universities in the U.S., which is Columbia University in New York City. In terms of experience, I keep telling you, the best experience a leadership of a country needs is integrity, is experience they've spent doing good, not the experience they've spent doing corruption, killing people, and manipulating the populace. In terms of exposure, I have done some 33 decades of monitoring and participating in the political process in Nigeria, influencing it extensively to the point that I have said, without some of us today, I started at the age of 22 at the University of Lagos, we will not even have democracy. It was based on the experience of some of the people that have been paraded as frontliners today. We will still have military rule. Some of them even participated in military rule. They participated in sabotaging the country we call Nigeria today. So how dare we call that experience? An experience that brings poverty, that brings diseases, that brings insecurity is not an experience we should be parading in public.
All right.
Yes.
So let's go to the nitty-gritty of your manifesto. Yeah. I have a summary of Sowore, the AAC, and what the party is bringing to the table this time around. Of course, Sowore is the presidential candidate of the AAC, and these are his priorities. Because it's summarized the manifesto as a people's manifesto for total liberation of Nigeria. That is what he says he's going to do. Now, the priorities include justice, peace and security, economy and jobs, welfare and social programs, democratic restructuring. Let's begin with the first one, justice, peace and security. Part of that, you said, community oversight over policing. There is a major challenge of security, not only in Nigeria, but globally. There are challenges. You will even hear countries like the United States that there are threats of terrorist attack. Yes. Now, the question is, in Nigeria, when you say community oversight over policing, what do you mean?
Well, we would democratize the policing system, our security system, to the point that I support state policing, up to the level of campus policing, local government policing, village policing. I'm not talking about vigilantes. I'm saying that every sector of the Nigerian state should be able to control who police them and how they are policed, because we've seen over the years that the communities do a better job, providing security for themselves than the police that is superimposed over them. And by the way, the Nigerian police in particular, but I want to focus on them, were never created for the Nigerians of today. The police that we have in Nigeria today had transformed severally. At the time, it used to be referred to as the Hausa Constabulary. And when Nigeria was set up as a business in 1900, it was transformed to the Queen Constabulary to protect the interests of the British in Nigeria. There was a time they called them Askari, and it just went on like that. That is why they always never felt the need for them to protect Nigerian people. But if security and policing were to be democratized to the point that every community controlled their police, you would not have the kind of, or the level of insecurity that we have.
Where has that worked? That model?
I lived in the US for 20 years. Even my town has a police department. And they have like 7 vehicles. So we know them, and they have boundaries. The moment you leave that particular town, you enter into another town, another policeman is there. And the state has oversight over state rules. So you have like state police, and then you have the national police in the US known as the FBI. So now there are campus police departments as well. I mean, the important thing is that there are oversights, with them, and if they violate rights, for instance, and they're investigated by the FBI or the Justice Department in the US can take over the police department for a while until they reform the issues there. But what you find out is that there are police at every level controlled by the community. So what
we have told ourselves is that we will not just listen to you politicians on how you say you want to do it.
Yeah.
It's how you want to achieve it, because these ideas are all over the place, and most of the manifestos look alike. Now the question is, most of them look alike.
They don't look like.
You see security, you see economy. Everybody talking about.
The difference is clear.
But the question is, Sowore, how would you achieve this policing structure, considering the Nigerian structure that we have, that does not support
what is more important about all of this is the fact that we want to restructure Nigeria, and you can find it there. But our democratic restructuring is different from the one you are hearing, which is nobody can even tell you what they mean by restructuring. The first restructuring Nigeria needs, that we should not shy away from, is to jettison the 1999 Constitution. It wasn't a constitution made for Nigerian people. It was a fraudulent document imposed on Nigerian people by the military, to the point that I think there was a Minister of Information, Chief Sowore, who said that at the time Chief Obasanjo was sworn in 1999, they had not printed a copy of this current Nigerian Constitution. So the Constitution first failed in the essence that it was not created by the people. It was not a Constitution that underwent what is most critical about creating a Constitution, which is referendum. It was just written and dumped on the Nigerian people. So when we make a new Constitution, which is one of our priorities, that's the democratic restructuring we are talking about, we will allow all of this to pass through the process of constitution making and also referendum.
I mean, if you have looked at the Constitution of Nigeria, the aspects that will allow you to do this is almost impossible. Amending the Constitution, just for a moment, okay. Amending the Constitution in this respect, because there are layers of the allowance that is being given to the lawmakers to be able to adjust the areas you have mentioned in the Constitution, for example, and that's why you have almost not seen state creation, local government boundary adjustment, because they are cast in aspects of the Constitution that are almost impossible to touch. And over the last 20 years or more, we have not seen any action in that respect. Now, give us a timeline. Should you be president of Nigeria, considering how difficult this aspect of our Constitution is to amend, because it's not in your hand as a president, it's in the hands of the National Assembly and the State Houses of Assembly, and they will have to vote two-thirds. How would you, just a moment, what is the timeline and how do you hope to achieve it?
Yeah, it is in the hands of Nigerian people to decide whether they need a new constitution or not. I can just show you what's happening in Colombia. I'm talking about the country Colombia recently. They have the same problems. They have a constitution that constitution was even real, not the fake one we have here. And the system, the elites didn't want the constitution to be changed. The people went on the streets and demonstrated that they want a new constitution. It is just like saying that you want to solve Nigeria's problem, but you don't want to make the efforts that's required to make Nigeria work. That is what we're saying, and that's why I'm telling you that I'm different. I'm going to change Nigeria. I'm not going to keep Nigeria in the hands of people who have made constitutions to enrich themselves. I'm going to keep Nigeria working for the Nigerian people by going straight to them, and that's why this is a manifesto. I'm not going to tell you that apartheid has ended, but I want to keep the apartheid constitution in place, to keep enslaving the Nigerian people, to keep the Bantu education in place. I'm talking about what they did in South Africa. I am going to change the Nigerian. So
the reality,
if you are going to vote for me,
if
you are going to vote for me, you are voting for that promise to change the fraudulent constitution. There's no reason to build Nigeria.
So the reality is that you are operating a constitutional democracy.
It is a constitutional democracy, but the most important people in the constitutional democracy are the people.
A moment. The question is, you cannot, with the experience, except you are deceiving Nigerians tonight.
I'm not deceiving Nigerians.
When you become president, you will, by a fiat, just change the constitution. It is not that easy. You will be a president of AAC should you win, but you will need the National Assembly. Okay. How do you hope to have majority of AAC in the National Assembly, the majority of AAC in the State Assembly, to be able to achieve this? Yes. Because these are the realities.
We are presenting candidates in all these constituencies you mentioned, not across the country because we started late because of what happened to the party. But at the same time, I am presenting to you my own constitutional agenda for the country. In the same way I presented in 2018-2019 a minimum wage, and people were telling me that the minimum wage was not important, it would cause inflation. Those who were arguing against a minimum wage of 100,000 in 2018 and 2019, especially Facebook economists, I've now discovered that 100,000 is even too small for anybody to survive in today's Nigeria. So I'm going as a transformational leadership. I watched Obama when he was campaigning, saying, I want to break the back of the healthcare system in the US and put in place a different healthcare system. It's called Obamacare. People hated him for it, especially the health insurance company, just like you call them HMOs here in Nigeria. But when he got there, he did it. When Biden came, he said he wanted to put in place an infrastructure fund, $1 trillion over a long period of time. And some people were opposed to it in the U.S. Congress, but the U.S. people wanted it. They forced their representatives to sign off on it. That's how it is done. You cannot want to change Nigeria and keep referring to the people who hold Nigeria down based on their personal
The
interests.
reality, Mr. Sowore, is one thing is to have the idea, one thing is to have the political...
I'm expressing to you my own reality.
Yeah. So the question is that your own reality needs to conform if you have to change Nigeria.
My reality does not...
There's a political structure in the country.
My reality cannot be built on a fraudulent document called the Constitution of Nigeria, made in 1999. That was not made by Nigerian people. That is part of where we are, how we are all trapped.
Because we're just on one of the points that you have put in your manifesto. And the last part of that, justice, peace, and security, is where you mentioned a National Victims Trust Fund to compensate all victims of violent conflict. Is this idea coming from the NSAS? And how do you hope to get this fund? Where would this fund be coming from?
It's not only NSAS. There's a lot of victims of violence. Violence from state actors and non-state actors who are victims of negligence on the side of Nigerian state. And we're saying that all these people require compensation because the state failed them over this year. That's why they became victims in the first place of the kind of violence that were recklessly either aided or negligently supported by the state. That's the reason why we're putting that fund in place. And we will get it by ensuring that we put aside the funds from our own national budget to compensate people who are victims of state negligence or non-state actors that we could have prevented from inflicting this kind of violence on them, including NSAS.
So there will be a law to back this?
Yes.
It will be an executive proposition.
It will be an executive proposition, but we can also do, an executive directive at the beginning of it or before it becomes law. So
another aspect of your manifesto is economy and jobs. And one part of it is, you said, to revitalize power sector through decentralization and clean energy mix, hydro, solar, wind, tidal, and biomass.
Yes.
Now, I mean, there are a lot of realities in Nigeria that a lot of people who are players have complained about. How the law is framed, the jurisdiction of the state, and every aspect. I mean, there's just how much power that you can generate and use within your I mean, it lies within some sectors of the country.
Yes.
How would you unbundle, for example, the power sector based on what you say you are going to decentralize? How would you achieve it? And considering the way and manner things are right now, there are a lot of water that has gone under the bridge. How some of these power sectors have been privatized and the monies that government have put into it. What will happen to all of those?
Right now, government is subsidizing the fraud in the power sector because most of the people who bought the unbundled part of the power sector are still being subsidized with government loans, grants, and in some cases, those of them who completely failed have had their toxic loans overtaken by AMCON. So what are we wasting our time for?
Would you be probing that?
We'll probe that, but the first thing is to renationalize.
What do you mean by that?
The country takes back its property. Because what we have done over these years is to give out, we invest $1 trillion on a project, and then we sell it for.
So you roll back the privatization?
Absolutely. The kind of privatization that is sabotaging the power sector today will be totally abolished.
But the question is, the power sector stakeholders said, government taking charge of it is not making it work. That's why they propose privatization.
The private sector taking it over with stealing money from the Nigerian people, is it working? No. It's not working.
What message would that send to investors?
Investors
who have invested money into...
Who are the investors? It's Nigerian people that have invested in this power sector you're talking about. The privatization thing is a scam. It's still Nigerian money stolen by them. I don't want to mention on your station because you'll be worried about libel and all that. I would have mentioned the people who are owners of the private electrical companies, and you will trace back to them a lot of stolen funds in this country. I'm telling you this.
So how long will it take you to, and how many megawatts can you generate?
We are targeting 24,000 megawatts generated and transmitted in 4 years.
In 4 years?
Yes.
Within the first year, how many can you generate?
Well, the first year will be preparatory to it, signing agreements, ensuring we bring in the right companies to help out. And then following that,
there's a German company that is working already. with the Nigerian government?
We will look into that if they are the only ones we need and if they are competent enough to do so. We've seen their work in Egypt. It looks promising, but they also have a lot of baggage in terms of corruption.
How long back will you take the probing?
Well, you know, the Siemens thing is about 7 years ago, so that's not it won't take long to investigate and probe what happened between them and the Nigerian government and why they haven't been able to implement the same way Egypt was able to implement and got 26,000 megawatts, and they have almost 40 million houses in Egypt now, homes fixed to the national grid. And like we told you before, and we were having that conversation, we'll break down that grid and have regional grids, mini grids, and we'll also want to promote retailing of electricity, which most people have probably never heard about before, but I'll explain it briefly, is that will allow you can grow electricity, you know, pull it together and sell it. Let's say you have power, you have solar panels on your roof and you're generating more than you need. You get a special meter to be able to sell to other people who don't have enough. So pulling off that kind of electrical supply is also a way of getting out of this. But what we have in Nigeria up to a point, and this is a confused privatization process, is that you can't do anything with electricity except you go to NBED.
Now, so you talk about job creation.
Yes.
How many jobs would you be creating?
With 24 megawatts of electricity in 4 years, 24,000 megawatts of electricity in 4 years, you'll be creating nothing less than 1.5 million to 4 million jobs. You know, if you break it down to the number of people that needs to work on the solar farms that we are planning for the northern part of the country that will generate 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts. You know, we are talking about the number of persons that work on tidal, you know, biomass. And the biomass has a connotation, by the way, and I will explain it briefly, that we can make a lot of this electrical supply, up to 1,000 megawatts, from cow dungs. And that is why we also have a ranching program for the country, not Ruga.
All right, let's go to the issue of welfare and social programs. You're talking about free education.
Yes.
Now, what we will not allow is for politicians to deceive Nigerians. As much as that sounds so good, yeah. Free education, primary health care for all, social housing for all, it sounds very fantastic to the ears. Yeah. Everyone will want to hug that idea. But where would he be getting the money from? Free education to what level?
To every level. And the money is there. I keep saying this to Nigerians, and I say it without, you know, with that knowledge of how they manage Nigerian economy. As a journalist and individual that has fought corruption for the last 16 years, I can tell you that what has been taken out of Nigerian treasury in the last 16 years that I started Sahara Reporters, I no longer do it now because of these political engagements, is enough to have supported free education in this country or to support it for another 50 years or 100 years ahead of now. And, you know, I had a video that I shared on my Facebook timeline. People can go see it. And it's talking about the United Arab Emirates, particularly the Dubai Emirates. They provide free education for everybody. They even pay people to get married. And we all started the same oil that we're selling. So, but what we have been doing in Nigeria is corporate welfare and individual powerful people welfare. So all this AMCON is their own welfare package. So you can owe 50 billion naira, and AMCON can help you use your wristwatch to wipe out 2 billion out of it. They will rate you with wristwatch, or value your wristwatch, anything you provide, and you walk away with it. You keep your billionaire status, and the country is in tatters. I had done a research, and this one came from NDIC. There are 128 million Nigerians with bank accounts. Only 2% of them or so, 0.6% of them have 500,000 and above in their account. Meanwhile, 5 Nigerians, according to Oxfam, have more money than 99% of Nigerians. What kind of country is that?
Is that a problem?
It's a problem. If the money is not legit.
Let's wrap up now.
Yes.
Should you lose this election, what would you do?
I'm not going to lose the election if it's a free and fair election.
Where will your votes be coming from?
It will come from Nigerian people.
Where is your main stay? Where would your vote majorly be coming from?
You're talking about my constituency. Every constituency.
You're from Ondo State.
Yes, but I'm not contesting as an Ondo State man or a Southwestern
but
candidate.
every politics is local. You have to have an origin.
It is local if you have local ideas only. So
you see yourself winning this election?
I absolutely believe so. I'm better off than the people who have, the entitlement.
With the ideas they have brought to the table,
yes.
Should you lose this election, would you be willing to work with whoever wins?
I'm not running for election to look for a job. I have a job already that I do very
But you
well.
love this country.
I love this country, and that's a job I've done my entire life.
If anybody wants you to help him in their government, if you don't win, would you be willing to take that?
I am not running for election to go into government. I'm running for election to totally bring liberty on the ballot.
Omoyele Sowore, the presidential candidate of the AAC, thank you so much indeed. And I wish you the very best in your people's manifestos for total liberation. And I hope that at the end of the election, we'll be able to, or before then, we'll still have some engagement with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for me.
We'll take it.